Number 5 on this list is the Navy UFOs. This is one of the most famous alien or UFO encounters that humans have had in the last few decades. Reader's Digest says, when it comes to extraterrestrial life and making contact with those from outer space, everyone has an opinion. Some think it's all a hack, some are open to speculate, and others still are entirely taken with the tales and stories as old as time, cameras poised and tinfoil hats at the ready. UFOs have fascinated and confused us for years as each new flying saucer or hovercraft sighting makes national news and splits us into two camps. While it's easy to debunk individual stories, it's way harder to argue with the US Department of Defense. In videos leaked back in 2007 and 2017, the Pentagon has aimed to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage that has been circulating was real. In the video, unidentified objects are seen spinning and hovering in the air and above the water, while two Navy pilots remark in shock and confusion over the two oblong disc-shaped objects. So you may be thinking, well, how did the government try to hide it if they were the ones that actually released it? Well, they did release it themselves, but we have to remember that that was only after the videos had been leaked. In 2007 and 2017, these videos had made their way to the public without the government stamp of approval. So everyone was freaking out and speculating on what the heck this thing could be and why we hadn't heard anything about it. What the heck it is, I don't know, but why we hadn't heard about it is because the government had chosen not to tell us. The only reason that they inevitably released the videos is because they got their hand caught in the cookie jar. They were found out. They were exposed when these videos were leaked. At that point, they could either continue to vehemently deny something that was clearly pointing towards naval activity, or they could fess up and release it themselves in hopes of taking less public backlash. They opted to do the second one because, in their words, they wanted to clear up any misconceptions by the public. That, however, is code for, we got caught and we think that releasing it now would be better for us in the long run. If it was up to them though, these never would have seen the light of day. Which then makes you wonder, how many other videos like this are out there that you and me, we just don't know about? Number 4 on this list is the O'Hare incident. Chicago's O'Hare International Airport had quite the interesting experience back in 2006. Reader's Digest says, on November 7th, 2006, United Flight 446 was about to depart from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport when a dozen United Airlines employees spotted an odd metallic craft hovering over the gate. The employees reported that it hung in the air for several minutes before finally shooting up at breakneck speed into the clouds. The strangest part? The UFO did not register on the airport's radar despite all the witnesses. The FAA declined to investigate, chalking it up to a weather phenomenon. A weather phenomenon. Seriously? Yeah. Alright there, guys. Also, for those who don't know, the FAA stands for the Federal Aviation Administration, and they're a government-run agency that deals with pretty much anything that flies. So don't get it twisted, guys. This was definitely the government deciding that they didn't want to do anything with this incident, or at the very least, they didn't want the public to know about it. But you'd think that they could come up with a better excuse than a weather incident, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I've ever seen a weather incident cause odd metallic things to hover in the sky. Number 3 on this list is the 7 strange crafts. So this one is really interesting because the government did address it, but they definitely didn't chalk it up to being what a lot of people thought it was in Aliens. Reader's Digest says a 1952 incident where 7 unidentified objects appeared over secure airspace near the Pentagon was captured on film. The crafts were registered on radar and jets were immediately sent to investigate these suspicious strange crafts. However, when the American jets approached that airspace, those 7 objects disappeared from the radar. When the jets landed, the objects returned to the radar screen once more. President President Harry S. Truman was notified, and Air Force Intelligence Director General Sanford held a press conference saying that there were reports made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It's this group of observations that we're attempting to resolve, but there was no resolution. So we kind of just heard from the government that they were on it, but then didn't really hear anything after that. There was no resolution, or at least there wasn't one that was released to the public. Could I believe that they did actually discover something here, and they just decided that telling the public wouldn't be the best course of action? Absolutely I could. In fact, I almost guarantee it. I highly doubt that the American government would have seen this stuff and then after one pass with the jets just been like, well, alright, guess nothing's there, and then call it quits. No, they definitely would have kept investigating and looking until they discovered something. Telling the public about that though, probably wasn't in the cards. Number 2 on this list is the Richard French incident. So this is definitely one of the bigger cover-ups in UFO government history. Reader's Digest says in the 1950s it was Lieutenant Colonel Richard French's job to explain away UFO phenomena for the government. There was only one problem. Lieutenant Colonel French actually saw alien ships with his own eyes, reports the Daily Mail. At a citizen hearing on disclosure in 2013, the then 83-year-old man told the truth for the first time about what he saw as a young man in the waters of St. John's, Newfoundland, 2 UFOs that had crashed and sunk in the water, and aliens trying to fix them. They succeeded and took off. He didn't mention UFOs in his report at the time. How's that for a freaky government cover-up? Yeah, so that's about as government cover-up as we can get, guys. My guy legit says UFOs saw aliens and specifically omitted it to save face and not panic the public. I guess the guilt and also just the whole story had been eating away at him for decades though, and eventually he had to come clean and tell the public. Too little too late though with a story like this, because we never got an opportunity to investigate these aliens or talk to them or anything. Or at least, that's if he's telling the truth. For all we know, he's still leaving some parts of the story out. Only the government and Richard really know what happened. And number 1 on this list is the unexpected visitor. A man named Rick Porcels who lived in Texas got a very unexpected and unwanted visitor late one evening at his home. The story goes like this. In 2008, an unfathomably large aircraft hovered above Stevensville, Texas. Many people in the community saw it, and according to the Mutual UFO Network, a pilot named Stephen Allen reported that the unusual aircraft was flying at an estimated 3,000 miles per hour and was being chased by fighter jets. Then, a man named Rick Sorrell said he saw the same thing while hunting. Later, Sorrell says a strange man knocked on his door and said, "Son, we have the same caliber weapons you have, but we have more of them. You need to shut your mouth about what you saw." Can you imagine getting a knock on your door and it being the government basically telling you that if you say anything, you're gonna die? Yeah, that is definitely an unexpected and unwanted visitor if you ask me. So not only were they threatening citizens, I also didn't hear any reports from the government about that jet that was flying behind the UFO. You'd think that if a jet fighter were deployed to chase down an enemy aircraft in friendly airspace, the public should probably know about it to stay safe. But nope. Absolutely nothing. Total radio silence from the government. How many other times have they gone to someone's house and threatened them like this that we don't know about? How many people have been intimidated by the government to stay silent? Really scary question that, honestly, we might not even want to know the answer to.
Number 5. A sighting from Colorado. When flying over Colorado, one could expect to see tall mountains, vivid landscapes, beautiful, lush forests, and clear running rivers, all of which are things I miss while being trapped in this void. Something that you might not expect to see when looking out your airplane window is an unidentified flying object carrying visitors from another world. But just because something is unexpected doesn't mean it can't happen. As an airline pilot named Jeremy Corbell found out earlier this year. Earlier this year, Jeremy Corbell was flying over Colorado when he saw something he didn't expect. At first, it appeared to be a shooting star, but this theory was thrown out when it appeared to split into 3 pieces, which then went into a triangle formation. The veteran pilot was so shocked at this that he pulled out his phone and filmed the phenomena. While passing aircraft can often be mistaken for alien ships by people who don't know any better, the fact that this was reported by a pilot who would know if it was simply another plane is very interesting. Multiple theories were put forward, including that the lights were high-altitude reconnaissance drones, but the level of light given off by them disqualified this theory. The pilot described the lights as being unlike anything he had ever seen in his entire career of flying. Over the last few decades, many commercial pilots have apparently seen unusual craft sharing the skies with them, but have been prevented from reporting the incidents by airline companies they work for. Are the airlines worried about their pilots seeming crazy? Or are they worried passengers will be afraid of flying if they know they aren't the only ones up there? Number 4. A sighting from the Southeast United Kingdom. You would think that an entire country who have been obsessed with the tales of an extraterrestrial who travels through space and time in a blue police box while kidnapping their citizens to act as his acolytes for the last 60 years wouldn't be too shocked when confronted with evidence that aliens from other planets really exist. But it would seem that no matter how much fiction one consumes, it can still be shocking when confronted with the real thing. As a security guard in England found out in our next entry. When checking CCTV footage from your work, you may be expecting to see animals or even some light crime. But in July 2022, a man in the United Kingdom saw something far stranger. Visitors from another world. On the screen, he saw a large glowing sphere suddenly appear above a nearby power station complex. It hovered above the station and then just as suddenly disappeared. At first, the man thought it was a flare, but there was no trail showing where it could have been shot from. He continued to look for a rational explanation, checking flight radar to make sure it wasn't a plane or a drone. He went outside to see it with his own eyes, but nothing was visible to the naked eye. He brushed it off until a few days later when a coworker came in claiming to have seen the same light hovering and then disappearing over a nearby field. The workers went back through their CCTV footage and posted the footage online. What exactly did they see in the sky? And where did it go when it disappeared in the blink of an eye? These workers will likely never know and will instead carry these questions around in their heads until the day they die. Number 3. A sighting in Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas is a city that would sound like a city in a science fiction novel if we didn't know for a fact it is real. A city where vice and debauchery are encouraged, with claims that no consequences will be remembered once you leave its borders. A flashy city of neon, constructed in the middle of a barren desert. Considering how ridiculous that sounds, and Nevada's already considerable reputation for alleged alien activity, perhaps we should not be surprised that visitors from another world would want to take a look for themselves. Proving that what happens in Vegas does not always stay in Vegas, we have our next entry. A man and his friend were driving home at night when they saw unusual activity in the sky. 2 large white orbs of light were floating in the sky. As if this were not shocking enough for the witnesses, smaller red orbs began to appear as if coming from the larger craft. These red lights would fly off on their own, sometimes returning to the larger white orbs. The witnesses claimed that over 25 of these red orbs came out of the craft and flew around, which begs the question. Did they see an alien craft or something else? If it was an alien craft, what was the purpose of these smaller red lights? Were they searching for something? And if they were, did they find it? Was this something sinister or simply an interstellar game of hungry hippos? More importantly, why am I asking you? The glowing white orbs reportedly stayed in place for over 5 hours before eventually disappearing into the night. Number 2. A sighting in Sacramento. For those who are more skeptical, it is understandable that you would not be impressed by a lot of footage that is released of alleged alien encounters. It is often grainy, shaky footage that looks like it was filmed on a potato rather than a camera. And oftentimes, one is right to be skeptical. Oftentimes, things can be mistaken for alien crafts when seen through the lens of a phone camera late at night in the dark. But sometimes, people witness the unexplainable in broad daylight. Such is the case in our next entry from Sacramento, California. In this case, a man was in his yard with his family when he looked to the sky and saw a cone-shaped object flying through the sky. They pointed it out to their parents, who were also in the yard, and all of them did their best to capture footage of the cone-shaped craft. It seemed to morph in shape between a cone and an elliptical shape, but when they zoomed in, they saw that the bottom of the cone was emitting light. It is clearly not a plane, and the light coming out of the bottom is curious to say the least. Number 1. A sighting in Canton, Ohio. When working a full-time job, having the opportunity to relax on your day off with a cold drink in the company of your loved ones is something you look forward to all week. While imagining how you will spend your leisure time, you may imagine a variety of experiences like land darts or barbecuing for your friends and neighbors. Rarely do people imagine that they will be spending their time off witnessing an interaction between the military and an unidentified flying object, as is the case in our next entry. On the 10th of November, a man was sitting on his back porch enjoying a well-earned day off when he heard the sound of a military helicopter. The helicopter appeared to be chasing after something. He looked around and saw several small, white glowing shapes moving at high speed away from the helicopter. He grabbed his phone to record what he was seeing, but several of the shapes disappeared before he could record. However, some of them remained and he was able to capture them on film. While this is impressive footage, the most disturbing part of the story for me is the helicopter chasing them. Were they trying to research the UFO? Or were they attacking them or chasing them away? Whatever it was, let's hope that it didn't result in any tensions between humanity and an advanced alien race.
Number 5. TikTok sighting. Our first entry on this list comes to us from a very reputable source, TikTok. TikTok user Drillabang, who posted this video recently online. The caption, "We caught them out there," is almost Mulder's catchphrase of "the truth is out there." Almost. And it seems like they are. The video shows a short clip of someone filming the sky and clouds, and passing through the clouds slowly is something. It's kind of hard to tell. It's an unidentified flying object. A small black being with what looks like tentacles protruding from it, like a little black jellyfish. The entity is moving slowly through the sky, with what looks like an electrical field following all around it. The being appears to be electrical, possibly a small mechanical drone. My first thought looking at one of these things is just how much this thing looks like the Sentinels from the Matrix. Could very well be evidence of the simulation leaking through. This clip is undeniably pretty odd. It's hard to make out just how big this flying entity is, although it does look a little bit small, but really it's hard to tell. Is it a spacecraft? Is it a living being but biomechanical? Is it a drone? Of course, it has to be said, the clip, as impressive as it is, could very well be a high production hoax. Like I said, the thing really does look a little too perfect for me, and it looks a lot like one of those Matrix Sentinels. I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if it's a shrunken down 3D model of it used for the video. But real or fake, you can't deny that the video is captivating and has people talking. Well, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments about this one if you think this has you convinced. And hey, while I've got you here listening, you want to see a whole lot more spooky stuff this month? Well, I got news for you, pal. I got boxes full of spooky stuff. Subscribe for a fresh fright in your inbox delivered daily. Number 4. Chilean UFO. Our next entry was posted to Reddit on r/aliens. I mean, where else are you gonna find alien clips? The video posted is filmed from a mountain in Chile, where a group of friends on a hike found something amazing in the sky, and luckily had their phones on them to record it. This entity floating around them doesn't really look like your traditional UFO sightings. It looks like a ball of pure energy just hovering above them in a triangular shape, looking like distilled pure light or just some photons or something. Looking around in the background, you can see there's nothing around them. No airports, no mysterious army bases nearby, just a big mountain range and a bizarre glowing ball of light hovering around aimlessly. A user on Reddit offered a rudimentary translation of the friends talking, which adds a little bit of insight to the clip. We can hear the friends joking that it could be a spirit bomb from Goku and there's going to be an epic duel soon. Goku is technically an alien, so I guess if Goku was real and you saw him flying around on the Nimbus cloud, that would qualify for a UFO sighting. They go on to joke that it looks like something out of the movie Independence Day. It's really hard to say just what this thing is. Now, usually I tend to roll a little bit more Scully than Mulder, and I'm naturally a bit skeptic, but I am completely out of ideas looking at this thing. The edges of the triangle are so very visible, and it doesn't really seem like it follows any one particular flight pattern. I can't take even the slightest guess what this might be, so your guess is just as good as mine, my ghouls and goblins. Take a look for yourself, and decide for yourself what the answer is. Number 3, the Ring of Light. Another entry coming to us fresh from Reddit, posted by user Jesse Zell. A short clip that shows us something incredibly bizarre. The clip is captioned appropriately, "The most unexplained thing I have ever seen in my life," and I'm strongly inclined to agree. Take a little look-see. In the clip, we get a pretty good shot at a suburban house and the overcast night sky above. A little bit above the house, there appears to be a ring of light that appears, circling around, appearing a few lights at a time, rounding the house a few times. That's bizarre. Even the skeptics should buy into this one. I mean, it's easy to just imagine a flying saucer hovering a little bit out of view atop the clouds, descending its undercarriage lights on the neighborhood. A user in the comments proposed that it could just be nothing more than a series of spotlights. But the original poster and uploader of the video insists that from where they were standing, the lights are appearing above the clouds, not below them. And even then, what explains the perfectly circular pattern displayed? The user goes on to say that there was no particularly loud noises emanating from around the skies, and it was very hard to make out what was happening. They go on to add that they're very familiar with drones and have drones flying around their home with some regularity. I'm hoping they mean just a neighbor or an enthusiast and not that they're being watched. And that they would recognize a drone if there was one, and that they are certain these lights were not caused by drones. So just what is causing it? What was it? Is this Reddit user being observed by someone from the stars? Are they potentially a target for an abduction? We eagerly await a follow-up on this one. Number 2, the cube. Posted to YouTube by user, well, fittingly named, Is This a UFO? This brief 20-second clip showcases a pilot filming from inside the cockpit. Also, side note before I start talking about all the alien stuff, is that safe? Are you allowed to be doing that? I guess the plane doesn't crash in the video, so I'll take their word for it. Anyway, the clip is really short and sweet. We see from the window that there's a small cuboid-like shape blasting through the sky. The footage is extremely clear, unlike most UFO footage, and it's really easy to see what's happening, although it doesn't help matters much or provide you with any clear answers. What we can see is a small black cube propelling itself forward. There's no trail of smoke, no lights flashing, just a small black cube flying around. So what is that? Some comments in the video suggest that it could be a weather balloon or a helium balloon, although I gotta say the altitude is a bit questionable, or why it's traveling horizontally so fast. Its travel in the video does seem a bit pointed and intentional, like it's trying to get somewhere, although that could just be me wanting to apply sentient traits for it because I badly want to believe. Interestingly though, in 2014, a report from a 10-year Navy pilot veteran, Lieutenant Ryan Graves, claims that in his service, he would see UFOs nigh daily and would report them constantly, only to have his reports ignored. Interesting. He said in his time in the service, he'd see unexplainable objects flying by him at hypersonic speeds with no trails, no exhaust, often 30,000 feet up in the air undetected by his radar. He said one of the more consistent things that he would see was an object that looked like a sphere encased in a cube. Kinda sounds a bit like the cube propelling itself forward in this clip, doesn't it? Fascinatingly, after this report from Graves, the Navy announced it would be changing the way it handled UFO reports internally. Perhaps there's something they know and they're not telling us. Number 1, the laser pointer. And finally, we're down to our number 1 clip. Now this is my favorite clip of the bunch, by far. I mean, I would hope so, otherwise why would I bother putting it at the number 1 spot? This clip also comes to us from Reddit from user Luke511, filming above him what appears to be a ball of light bouncing around bizarrely in the sky. A UFO if I've ever seen one. Luke, who when faced with the dangers of the unknown, the wonders of the cosmos, possibly standing on a chance to make that fabled first contact with another civilization with unknown frontiers, stood proudly and takes a laser pointer out and starts flashing it upwards to the sky. Now I have nothing but respect for this absolute madman who got right down to brass tacks. Because him flashing that laser pointer made this video go from, maybe that's a UFO, to, oh, that is definitely a spacecraft being piloted by an intelligent being. In the video, as soon as you see him flashing it around, the vehicle maneuvers on a dime, trying clearly to avoid the laser, which is pretty damning. Now the reason I love this clip so much, besides the fact that I do think it's pretty concrete evidence, assume these really are aliens flying around in that spacecraft. Imagine you're coming down to a new planet and you see a green beam coming from the ground pointing directly at you. Do you think they were freaking out? Do you think they were losing their minds, panicking that they got made? That laser was gonna come for them and destroy them? Or do you think it was more like a kitten situation? Like they saw the laser and got distracted by a really enticing game of intergalactic chase? Luke511, this has gotta be a top moment for humanity and for you as a whole. Tagging a UFO with a laser beam and potentially scaring alien life has got to be a landmark moment for us as a species. My only concern is that maybe this event might have sent intergalactic relations back just a little bit. I'm hoping aliens aren't afraid to visit the planet now because of the danger of green lights. We'll turn them off, we promise. We're sorry, it was just a little prank.
Number 5, the spook light. In the early 1830s, when the Native Americans were put on their forced march during the Trail of Tears, some of them reported seeing something unusual while near Missouri and Oklahoma's border. something that has remained a consistent part of American folklore and a relatively commonly reported sight ever since. While the Native Americans were passing through an area known as the Devil's Promenade, they apparently saw a glowing orb of light that was floating in the distance. Sometimes it's reported as being the size of a baseball, and other times as being the size of a basketball. Sometimes it remains stationary as it hovers in the night, and sometimes it appears to vibrate and twitch in the air. Explanations have included tales of two Native American lovers searching for each other in the night, the ghost of a Confederate soldier, and even the devil himself wandering the earth with a lantern. It has gone by many names, such as the Joplin Spooklight, the Hornet Spooklight, the Hollis Light, and the Devil's Jack-o'-lantern. The site of the Spooklight has become somewhat of a tourist attraction, with the area being especially popular around Halloween. But though scientists have speculated that it could be the result of a natural gas leak or car lights reflecting off a nearby river, this does not explain the dozens of sightings that occurred before the invention of the automobile. What if the cause of this floating orb is not the spirit of some lost soul trying to find their way home, but the manifestation of extraterrestrial activity? We've all heard plenty of stories of glowing orbs in the sky that have gotten closer and turned out to be starships from outer space. The Spooklight could perhaps actually be one of these unidentified flying objects. If you subscribe to the theory that aliens have not made direct contact with us because they are studying our species, it would make sense that this light would first appear during a major historical event where millions of displaced native peoples were forced into long marches. Perhaps the sightings since then have been follow-up studies of the area by aliens. If that is the case, and aliens were observing Earth during the Trail of Tears, let's hope they don't judge us for some of our most shameful behavior. Number 4. Funnel ghosts. Tell me if this tale sounds familiar. A couple moves into an old house. It's a bit of a fixer-upper, but they believe they can put in the work and make it a home. They live there for a while, but when night falls, they take a photo and see something they don't expect. Not the typical idea of a ghost where the spirit looks like a past human, perhaps with a transparent appearance, but what is known as a funnel ghost. These spirits are often described as being swirling wisps or spirals of light that often appear in photos or videos, with little to no explanation. Often, when these funnel ghosts are seen, they are believed to be past loved ones or former residents of the home come back to say hello. But maybe these wisps are really visitors from another planet. If aliens are real, they clearly do their best to remain as hidden as possible from humanity. This would explain why UFO sightings are rarely reported in crowded, well-lit areas, and why they don't tend to be active on social media. Despite alien abduction stories where people are taken away to be studied and probed by our alien visitors, if you really wanted to study humans, it would be much more informative to study them in their natural environments. Obviously, little green men running around your home and watching you while you and your family eat would be suspicious. So maybe they've developed a way to hide in plain sight. An advanced species capable of interstellar travel and with spacecraft that are rarely seen by human eyes and hardly ever captured with any clarity on film could be using some kind of technology that reflects ambient light in order to keep them invisible. If we assume this technology is used to hide their ships, it is not unreasonable to hypothesize that this technology could be available for aliens on the ground. The strange shapes appearing in photos that we assume are ghosts are actually aliens studying us in our own homes, using a cloaking device to remain undetected and only being seen when a camera picks up their telltale shimmer. Number 3. Sightings at the West Point Lighthouse in PEI. When it comes to lists of spooky and probably haunted locations, lighthouses are surely near the top of the list, just under murder houses, ancient manors, and abandoned mental hospitals. Such is the case for our next entry. A lighthouse on the west point of the Canadian province of Prince Edward Island. The lighthouse was built in 1876, being passed from keeper to keeper until the operation was automated in 1963. The lighthouse was renovated into an inn, museum, craft shop, and Chowder Kitchen in the mid-1980s, and has been the source of tales of the supernatural ever since. Visitors often report rather stereotypical ghost activity, such as lights turning on and off, disembodied voices, and cold spots, sending a shiver up guests' spines. More interesting for the purposes of this list are the tales of a ghostly burning ship being seen in the nearby Northumberland Strait. Legend says that at night, sometimes if you look out to sea, you can see a centuries-old ship whose crew were killed when their ship caught fire and sank. According to the tale, they made a deal with the devil in order to save themselves, and as a result are damned to burn on the ship for all of eternity. From the distance that the people who reported this burning ship would be from the boat, they wouldn't be able to make out with much detail on the apparition, especially at night when the ship appears in the vast majority of reported sightings. So, all they would really be seeing is a large, bright, flickering light coming towards the lighthouse that, through the context of the situation, they would assume was a ship. But it makes me think, there are so many stories of UFOs appearing as bright, shining, flickering lights that disappear just as soon as they appear. What if this burning ghost ship is actually an alien craft signaling with its lights? You may think, why would an alien ship be signaling anyone? But look at the situation from their perspective. You're flying around in your flying saucer above the waters of Canada. You see another bright floating light in the distance. You signal to let it know you are there, and when you get close enough to realize that it is not another alien craft, but a tower with a bright light on it that the humans have built on the cliffside, you realize and turn out your lights, causing your ship to seem to suddenly disappear to any humans who saw you. It might very well be a ghost ship, but the fact that it is so close to what would look like a floating light to the uninitiated makes me think this is just as likely. Number 2. Things moving on their own. Another common type of ghost is the alleged poltergeist. They are the type of spirit who enjoys their afterlife by messing around in your home with the intention of scaring you and causing as much property damage as possible. A common way these spirits apparently make their presence known is by moving objects and making them float through the air. Like when you hear a noise at night and go into the kitchen to investigate, only to find your mother's best china floating through the air before it suddenly drops to the floor, leaving you with one less token of remembrance to honor your loved ones with. But maybe this is not the work of a malevolent spirit, but simply a side effect of passing alien ships. When looking at various UFO sightings from across the world, some commonalities begin to emerge. The craft in question are often bright, shining lights against the dark night sky. They tend to appear and disappear just as quickly, and they often seem to be hovering or flying, seemingly on their own, with no visible means of propulsion. Or at least, none that we can see. Perhaps these alien craft are not flying with the use of rockets, but by manipulating gravity. If these ships are able to do this, they could use this to take away gravity under their ship, allowing it to hover or fly through the night. Something like this could affect the houses below it in a similar way that houses located near airports can have their contents rattled by passing planes. Perhaps when alien craft are negating gravity and flying overhead, they are unintentionally affecting gravity in the homes below them, causing things to float and move, not because of spirits, but because of gravity being manipulated. And once the ship has passed, the objects drop, making it seem like an evil spirit has destroyed these lighter objects out of spite for the homeowner. This would mean that people who are dealing with consistent ghost activity were actually just unlucky enough to be directly below an alien's commute. Number 1. Ghostly figures of the past. Everyone has heard some variation of a ghost story like this. You go into an old building that is hundreds of years old. At first, everything seems normal, when suddenly goosebumps break out across your flesh as a chill runs up your spine. You turn and see something you don't expect. A figure from the distant past stands before you. Perhaps it is a soldier from the 1930s, And perhaps it is a small Victorian child in one of those weird little sailor outfits. You try to stammer out some words of greeting, but before you can, they have disappeared before your very eyes. Stories like this are very common in ghost sightings, and can take place anywhere from an old Victorian mansion, a field where an important battle was fought, or even in your own home. You may think that something like this would scream ghost and nothing else. But what if these haunting apparitions are just a side effect of extraterrestrial travel? When considering the possibility of alien visitors, we must ask the question of how they got to our planet in the first place. Even if their craft were capable of reaching light speed, they would take hundreds of years to reach our planet, which hardly seems worth it if assuming these beings have a comparable lifespan to humans. Perhaps they could cryogenically freeze themselves to make the journey more manageable, but that would still make getting to and from the planet a real hassle. Or perhaps these alien beings are capable of faster than light travel, which our concept of science says is impossible. Maybe the answer isn't that these aliens are moving fast. Maybe the answer is that they are bending space and time to reach their destination. If these beings were capable of traveling across the fourth dimension and bending space and time around, or folding it in on itself, then it is reasonable to hypothesize that there would be some unintended side effects. One theory of how time works is that all of it is happening at once. So, if a place, say a spooky mansion, were occupied by a small Victorian child in one point of time, and say Ryan Reynolds in another, maybe time folding in on itself to accommodate alien travel would cause us to be able to catch glimpses into the other points in time. So, this hypothetical Ryan Reynolds would see the child from the past and assume it was a ghost. And who knows, maybe the child would see Ryan and assume he is a handsome spirit from the future.